have a writer from the Writers Guild who reached out to us, sent us some screenshots of a form that you're supposed to fill out in order to basically take a deep dive into your identity as a writer, because that's the most important thing about you, apparently, at least according to the Writers Guild these days. This writer reached out to us, sent the screenshots. I then, we talked about these screenshots. We showed them. We'll look at them again. But it's a very, to me, in terms of invasiveness, I think it's an invasion of privacy to ask all these questions about your sexual identity, gender identity, ethnic background. It's a little much. And what's happened over the last 4 years, according to this source and according to other people, because after we did this video last week, a lot of people, not just from the Writers Guild, other Writers Guild members, but other people from other guilds reached out and said, this is happening across the board throughout the industry. And people are afraid to speak up. But one brave writer has now spoken up. And here it is, front page of Film Threat, a veteran screenwriter's plot twist on Hollywood's DEI cultural shift. This is an open letter from a white writer to the film and TV business for the last 20 years. And great graphic there, Alan.
Yes.
I really
thanks, Adobe Firefly.
Was that Adobe Firefly?
Yeah.
Okay. It looks cool. I like it. I like where we're going with this. All right. So this is like an image from the writer's room. Let's go to the story. It's on the front page of Film Threat. We'll also put a link in the description to this story for this episode. But I'm gonna read the first paragraph. For the last 20 years, I've been a working professional screenwriter. Between 2004 and 2018, I was sent on hundreds of meetings with some of the best studio executives, producers, and directors in the business. I loved it. It was an opportunity to chat with like-minded people who love film, grew up with movies, and were making them at the highest level. We discuss ideas, plot, characters, and their arcs, and who's the audience. Maybe chat about subtext and themes. It felt like an episode of Jon Favreau's Dinner for Five. Sometimes you would end up getting work. Other times you'd made a great connection. Everyone was intelligent, film and TV savvy, and had a deep understanding of the business side of the industry. Suddenly, subtext and themes became the main point of discussing a project or IP. First question in every meeting became, what can we say with this project? Or what can we teach people with this story? Plot, character, and audience were now secondary and sometimes not even discussed. These new executives weren't savvy and business-minded execs. They were young, with no track record or comprehension of the bottom line. When the streaming wars started and the money hose was turned on, those experienced executives started relying on these young guns to pick up the slack. But the kids were less focused on the hero's journey and more concerned with taking down the patriarchy. Which leads us to the next point. The reality is that for the past 5 years, white, straight, male writers and directors with experience and successful track records have been sidelined. We talk about it over coffee or after screenings. We've essentially been told that because of our race and gender, we need not apply. At one point, my agent told me that they couldn't put me up for any OWAs, that stands for open writing assignments, or TV staffing jobs, because the execs only wanted to hear takes on the material from BIPOC or female or LGBTQ writers. Some shows even started instituting staffing quotas that 40 to 50% of the writing staff had to be people of color. Moving on. I know many showrunners who hate this, not because they didn't want to hire new writers and foster them. They didn't want half of the staff coming from a pool of young, inexperienced writers who knew nothing about working in a writer's room, production, post, or deadlines. Is this legal? Probably. But hey, I'm not an attorney. And there's no way to find out anyway, because if you ask any questions about this, you'll be labeled racist or called out for your white male privilege. If you so much as raise an eyebrow, there's a risk you'll never work again, which is why this story is anonymous. This may not be obvious at first glance. There sure seem to be a lot of white dudes at the Golden Globes, right? Well, this doesn't impact the top 2% of writers, showrunners, and directors, since they're in the rarefied air where they get to work no matter what. It's those of us with decades of experience working on some of your favorite TV shows and films that are now sitting on the sidelines waiting. No institution reinforces this more than the WGA. One glance at their monthly calendar of events shows a Latinx Writers Committee meeting, an LGBTQ Writers Committee meeting, a Committee of Black Writers meeting, a Middle Eastern Writers Committee meeting, a Women's Writers Committee meeting, and an Asian American Writers Committee meeting, to name just a few. I think the last one you're probably okay with the now.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Yeah.
Okay, good. Can you imagine if there was a white writers committee meeting? We might be murdered. And the saddest part of all of this is that most of the people who would fill that room are some of the most liberal people I know. People who have gone out of their way to foster new and unique voices. Check out the WGA's own 2022 Inclusion and Equity Report and make your own conclusion on the WGA's priorities on this. When creating a writer's profile on the WGA website, there is one box to check if you're heterosexual, 3 choices under transgender, and 6 under LGBTQ. Not sure what those statistics have to do with writing a great episode of The Witcher. This mindset was very present at the last in-house WGA meeting held before the strike of 2023. Every 3 years before we have a new deal with the studios, the negotiating committees sit on a stage and members throw their complaints at them. And God bless them, they sit there for hours on end, listening to a bunch of writers bitch and moan like I'm doing. The complaints at these meetings over the last 2 decades are always the same. How do we get more money and more residuals? In 2023, the meeting had a decidedly different tone. Very few complaints had to do with money this time around. There was a litany of complaints about not enough diversity in the ranks, young writers asking, how come I've worked for 2 years as a TV writer and I'm not a showrunner yet? A position that should take at least a decade of experience, if not 2, to reach. How do we make sure that the guild will fight for staffing requirements? I always thought that to survive in this business, it's a yearly, monthly, daily hustle. There are no guarantees, especially when it comes to staffing on a TV show. Moving on. What I took away from that night is that these young Turks think that working in film and TV is just a fun thing that anyone can do, and they can use this opportunity to put their stamp on the world. Can you blame them? It was easy to get here, especially when talent takes a back seat to filling a quota. Why worry? The showrunner and their number one, the most experienced writer-producer outside the showrunner, will pick up the slack and more than likely finish your insipid work. They can't complain about that episode you turned in late or didn't turn in at all, or they'll be called racist or a bigot or something else. And when they get a call from HR, it's just easier to shut up and run for cover from these kids who aren't ready for the big time. The blame for this mess is threefold. Young creative executives with no understanding of the business or what audiences want gained too much influence during the streaming wars. They also took it upon themselves to lead the charge in reinterpreting IP, changing successful comic books, novels, and remakes into projects that had something to say, not to entertain. Why even bother with IP if you don't respect the source material? The WGA followed their lead and threw a huge part of their membership under the bus in a race to bring in new members. And lastly, this new class of writers who weren't ready yet to step up to the plate worked on a lot of product that the general public didn't want to see and didn't relate to. There's a screenshot here of some of the boxes that must be checked. Last section here. What happens next is anyone's guess. TV is contracting. There were 600 TV shows in the last year, and now there are only going to be, from what I hear, 300. When it comes to film, there are even fewer jobs than ever. If we don't get back to telling great stories and making profitable shows and movies with AI right around the corner, the business may never recover. So let's start having those old school meetings again. The ones where you talk about story and characters and what the audience wants. And let's go back to hiring the best writers, the ones with the skill set and creativity, and not just the one with the right skin color or sexual preference. And then it says, if you're a WGA member who would like to share your story on or off the record, contact us. That's should have been in italics. I think I told you that note last night, Alan.
Okay. Sorry.
Could you make
Not
that
all caps? You don't want it in all caps?
Oh, I want it definitely in all caps.
Just in
Not in all caps. Just all right. What do you think, Alan? You edited.
You decided to stop the momentum of the flow.
I'm stopping that. We got to put it in italics so it's clear that it's not him writing it. All right. Alan, what are your thoughts on this?
Italics is pretty. I'll agree. Okay, so not to keep promoting the D files, which will come out next week. In the next D files, we'll show how this started.
Right.
And but here, yeah, it's out and out racism. And not only that, it's I forget the term, but it's the racism of low expectations. What's becoming very clear is that it's not what should have happened is that all the experienced white writers should have been mentoring up and coming, emerging, talented people of color, LGBT women, and down the line.
Right.
But the forces out there, especially during certain events during the pandemic, felt like that it wasn't moving fast enough. And what it seems like now is they're basically just moving out all the white men and bringing in all the POCs, regardless of talent. And we're experiencing that because the reality is there are people of color, there are LGBT writers, there are women who are qualified to be excellent writers. But they seem to not be going after those either, and this, you can call us racist and everything like that, but the proof is in the pudding. Look at what we're getting now.
Right.
And Echo is just the latest example of it. It reeks of inexperience. It just reeks of people who don't know how to tell a story and who are more concerned about, and the writer here mentions it. It's not how can we entertain people, but it's what can we say, or how can we teach people, and that's what woke means. It means that we don't care about you. We don't care about you being entertained. All we care about is that you feel guilty, and that we're going to tell you why you're a bad person. To me, that's the definition of woke in Hollywood at the moment.
Right. I have been hearing this for a long time. It surprises me. It's laid out in kind of a simple way. Inevitably, we're probably going to be called names. People are going to make accusations based on this story, but this all happened too quickly. And really, it has to do with less experienced people working in the industry who feel entitled now. And when you're working with people who feel entitled, it's hard to mentor someone who just got the job so easily. It
mentions there, people complaining that in 2 years they hadn't become a show writer.
Right. Oh, there are worse things that I've heard, worse stories. Yeah. Those are just some of the examples. We're going to get some more when people reach out to us, but this is concerning, but not surprising.
Yeah, I'll restate it. They can call us racist, they can call us misogynist, homophobes, whatever, but the proof is in the pudding. The Marvels, Wish, I'll put Echo. I think Disney is the greatest example of this in action and why it fails.
Robot Dues, who's a member, says DEI and affirmative action is racism. I've always thought that. I always thought, like, how is this still? I remember when I was a kid and there were all these like affirmative action and whatever, and I'm in college working 3 freaking jobs. I had when I was 19, I had newspaper routes. I had 120 customers on 3 newspaper routes. I delivered the papers every day but Sunday. Our paper didn't have a Sunday edition. I worked at a restaurant washing dishes on weekends. And then during the week, I worked at a video store so I could pay for my college. And then some other people didn't pay for their college.
Yeah. In college, I debated against affirmative action and was told I was racist by my white opponents.
Well, Alan, get used to it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. What do you think? Check out the story on Film Threat. Please share it. And if you're another YouTuber, please, I don't know, do a video or something.
And make a video.
Do a video. Why not? But I think it's what I hope it begins is a discussion about what this industry is about. Is the industry about bringing up people who really don't have anything to say, so they just parrot the message, because they don't really have. This is why I think when you've got young writers, they don't really know who they are, what their vision is, or what makes a movie. If you insert their name, if you tell me a James Gunn film, I know what that is. If you tell me a David Ayer film, I know what that is, because I understand who those people are as creators. But when you have people that are young and up and coming in the industry, I think the minimum 10 years you've got to spend in the industry before you should be even allowed to do something substantive.
Yeah, and you need to be associated with successful projects too.
Correct. You need to have gone through the process and whatnot. And what's happened is there's been this incredible cultural shift in the industry that has hobbled the industry. And all done with, I guess, good intentions. So there you go. Any other thoughts on this, Alan? Because you edited the piece. We were like texting furiously back and forth. Well, maybe not furiously. We were going back and forth last night about this story and just making sure certain things were protected.
Our conversations were, how do we make this anonymous? And I go, this is how.